here's the second review for our test tomorrow. I wanted to do a couple of these fraction ones. Remember I told you in the last video that fractions look a little funky, so be aware of that. Have your pencil and paper handy. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is look at this last denominator, because it's the only one that's not factored. And I noticed that if I factored it, I would end up with x times x minus 5. So x times x minus 5 is going to be my LCD. So my LCD is x times x minus 5. And now I'm going to multiply all the numerators by x minus 5. So x minus 5 times 6 over x equals x minus 5 times 1 over x minus 5 minus, be super careful with that, x minus 5 times x plus 4 all over x minus 5. Okay, so now let me just get rid of this because it's kind of in the way. That's from the last video. Alright, so now I'm going to cancel the x and the x, and I'm going to end up with 6 times x minus 5 equals, in the next one I'm going to cancel the x minus 5s. I'm going to be left with 1 times x minus this one, the x cancels, the x minus 5 cancels, and I'm left with just x plus 4. But notice I'm leaving the x plus 4 in parentheses because of that minus sign. So be super duper careful if there's a minus sign. And so now I have 6x minus 30 is equal to x minus 4 because I have to distribute that minus sign. Well, the x minus x, that goes away to 0. I'm going to add 30 to both sides. And so I end up with 6x equals 26. Divide by 6. X is equal to 13 over 3. And that's what the answer will look like. It'll look probably just like that if that kind of answer is there. I have to make sure that that doesn't make a denominator of 0, which it doesn't. Only 0 and 5 would make a denominator of 0. So I'm good with this one, so this is my final answer. That's the kind of checking I have to do. Okay? Alright, this was from the other day, or the last video, so I'm going to get rid of that so it doesn't cause confusion. I'll leave that one there. Alright, so here's another one with fractions. So this time, if I look at this denominator, 2x minus 4, I factor that as 2 times x minus 2. 2x minus 4 factors as 2x minus 2. So that's going to be my LCD. So I'm going to multiply 2 times x minus 2 times every fraction. 1, 2 times x minus 2 plus 2 times x minus 2 times 2 over x minus 2 equals 5 times 2 times x minus 2. So now I look at this and I'm going to do some canceling. In this first fraction, everything cancels away. So I have just a 1 plus the x minus 2 cancels here. So 2 times 2 makes 4 equals, on this end, nothing cancels. So this is 10. So 10 times x is 10x, and 10 times 2 is minus 20. And so now I have to solve for x. So I would add 20 to both sides, and I get 10x equals 25. Divide by 10. X equals 2.5, 2.5. Okay, might be an improper fraction. I don't know how it looks, but that's not gonna make a denominator of 0. Only 2 would make a denominator of 0, so that's not 2. So I can keep that answer as 2.5. All right, so those are the fraction ones. Oh, here's one with a fraction. This one's got fractions and letters, which is super awesome. So, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply by x, because that's my LCD. So I'm going to multiply x times 1 over x plus x times qx equals x times x. So these x's over here cancel. I get 1 plus x squared q equals x squared. So now I'm going to put the x squareds on the same side. So I'm going to subtract x squared q from both sides. And I'm going to have 1 equals x squared minus x squared q. Well, I can't really combine those because they're not like terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out an x squared. X squared, then it would be 1 minus q left over on that side. So now I'm going to divide by 1 minus q. Divide by 1 minus q. So cancel here. So I get x squared is equal to 1 over 1 minus q. And then if I'm going to solve for x, I would take the square root of both sides. So x is equal to, technically, plus or minus, but I'm just going to have positive 1 over 1 minus q. Okay? All right, that was pretty exciting. Let me show you that in its entirety, if I can make it all fit on the screen. That's really more for a final exam question than for today's question, tomorrow's test. All right. I don't know if we need to do any imaginary number stuff. I'm gonna jump down here to the bottom. No, I'll go ahead and do these. So be careful here. You're subtracting, so make sure you subtract both of them. So sometimes I change the signs so that I don't forget. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Negative 2 minus 3i is negative 5i. So that's a simple multiple choice question. Again, be careful. This is multiplying, so make sure you distribute to everybody. So 3 times 2 is 6. Minus 3 times I is minus 3i. Plus 4i times 2 plus 8i. And then positive 4i times negative I is negative 4i squared. Remember that I squared is negative 1, so this turns into a plus 4 over here. So now 6 plus 4 makes 10, and then negative 3i plus 8i makes plus 5i. Okay, so be careful with that. This one is the hard one. Remember, you have to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate. So this is 6 minus 2i. And I'll multiply the top by 6 minus 2i. So foiling the top or multiplying the top, 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times negative 2i is negative 2i. Negative I times 6 is negative 6i. Negative I times negative 2i is plus 2i squared. All over. Remember with this, you don't have to do the middle term. 6 times 6 is 36 minus 2i times 2i makes 4i squared. Remember that makes it a plus 4. So here my denominator is 40. My numerator, remember this guy on the end here is really a minus 2i. No, a minus 2. So this right here becomes minus 2. So 6 minus 2 is 4. And then minus 2i minus 8i is minus 6i is minus 8i. And now I'm going to factor out a 4 in the top. So I have 4 and then 1 minus 2i all over 40. So then I can cancel this as a 10 and this as a 1. So I have 1 minus 2i over 10. But probably that was written as 1/10 minus 1i 5. Why did I say 1i divided by 5? Because this is 1 over 10 minus 2i over 10. So when I wrote the answer, because I can't make fractions very well, they were the slash fractions. So 1 divided by 10 minus, and then over here I have this 2 and this 10. They simplify to 1/5. So I put minus 1i over 5. Okay? All right. Remember these with the 22, you're looking for, you're looking for multiples of 4, and multiples of 4 would be I to the 20th times I squared. Remember, I to the 20th, any multiple of 4 is 1. I squared is -1, so this is -1. Okay? All right, so hopefully that's good. I'll do, I guess, one more video with axis of symmetry, vertex, increasing, decreasing, because